Preparing to live stream.
Well, then. It says, are we live?
I think we are now live now.
Okay. Well, if we are live, welcome to episode 3 of season 2 of The Baptist
And the Buddhist.
with Mark.
And Brian. And I accidentally labeled this episode 2.
Oh, come on.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Hey, this is episode 2 for YouTube live at least because they didn't get to see episode 1 live, so
Oh, that's true. And
it's
this is
almost accurate.
exclusively YouTube at this point, so.
Exactly. Not for the audio people or anyone watching this later, so
Yeah, that's true.
I'll just cut that part out. No. Oh man, so last week was pretty fun. We got to talk about movies and stuff, and we got to watch movies too before that.
Yeah.
Maybe...
I have watched a few more episodes of The Chosen, by the way.
Oh, sweet. Awesome. In order, like sequential order?
Yeah, I started off like on episode 4 of season 1, I think, kind of where after the first episode you told me to watch.
Okay.
And so I just picked it up from there pretty much.
You've seen like episode 1 in the past, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Episode 2 kind of speeds up after that, but yeah, definitely like 3 and 4 good stuff. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about movies this week.
Nope, we are not.
This week we are talking about music. We're talking about music. Yes.
Oh man, I wish I knew we were gonna do that. I would have grabbed my hurdy-gurdy right over here.
Oh yeah, because do that.
That'll be for the outro.
Yeah. We're talking about music. As you can tell, or maybe you haven't noticed, but for Brian and me, music is pretty important. We have guitars and guitar shapes behind us all over the place. So
yeah, there is an actual guitar back there too behind this.
Yeah, I noticed that. I could see the head of it at least, but yeah. We're gonna talk about music, and before we start that though, where can people find us if they have not been able to see us?
You can find us right here.
Right where, if you guys see us right now, you know where to find us. But if you don't know where to find us and you don't see us right now for some reason, which now it's getting kind of weird, you can find us on all podcast subscription places, apps, websites. Just search for The Baptist and the Buddhist. And
we are on Instagram,
Facebook, Twitter. It's like we're echoing or something. No,
YouTube.
Man, we're on Reddit too. We do have a Reddit page. Not much there, or whatever you call a Reddit profile.
It's an account.
Yeah, an account. Yeah, sure. We're there. We're on TikTok. Nothing there yet either. So follow us everywhere. Oh man, but we're not on SoundCloud. Like I was just thinking music.
Oh wow.
I'm like, what? We're not on SoundCloud. Limited storage and all, but
yeah,
for free.
And if you're old fashioned, email at baptistandbuddhist@gmail.com.
Yep. baptistandbuddhist@gmail.com. No thes. No definite articles.
Efficient.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Definite articles are for the past.
Yeah.
So, man, music.
Where do we begin?
Well, I was kind of thinking of going along, hitting up the topic of music in the way of what our faiths, the involvement of music in our faiths, and then we can go into a more personal detail of music in our lives.
That's a great idea. How is music utilized in these traditions?
Oh yeah. And these could be very well, I'll hold off on my commentary for a little bit. Um, but you know what? I guess it's my turn first, right? so I'll go first. I have a few notes here, but not a whole lot.
Music notes.
Hopefully, music notes. Yes, I'm liking the puns so far. And it's funny. I just received a message on Facebook, like literally right now, about music. So it's everywhere. Music is everywhere. Music is very
everywhere.
influential in everything, really. If you really boil it down, music is everything. Music is life. I
You
used
know,
to.
the even Aster thinks that she tried to sing a song. Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
music, uh, the universe apparently resonates at like a D major or something. So,
Whoa. Yeah, and like toilets flush at like a C sharp or something.
is that so?
I just made up that note, the what it's at, but someone did like do a study and like found out what like scale toilets flush at. But
So
yeah.
you could harmonize with it or something.
Oh man. I mean, most bathrooms have good reverb going on, so like take a mandolin in there and like remember one time we were at the Grand Canyon, I think, or no, it was in the Rockies, and our brother-in-law is like, "Hey, Mark, bring your mandolin in here." And it was like at a national park bathroom, and it's like, "You got to come in here." I'm like, "What?" And it's like, "You play it," and it was like really cool reverb. Getting
That's
off
awesome.
topic, but oh yeah, music. It's very cultural too. Um,
Oh yeah.
I I think no matter what culture you find, you'll find some form of music. Um, Instrumentation, singing styles. You have so many genres and styles around the
Yeah.
world. It's
I
crazy.
think music is one of the like two or three like human traits that they've found in every single culture, um that, you know, cultures that evolved completely separately from each other all have come up with some form of music.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And even like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the aliens use music as language. um, oh, we're talking about movies again.
And aliens, that's for another episode.
Oh yeah, that is. um, so what does the Bible say about music? And I did more of like I kind of condensed my notes to a cursory review because there can be a lot said about music, but there's a lot also open to discernment and interpretation as well. So whenever I think of music in the Bible, the first place that my mind goes to is Genesis 4. And it's pretty early on in the Bible, but it's always, this has always stood out to me. But it talks about this guy named Jubal. Who is Jubal? It says Jubal was the father of all such as handled the harp and organ.
Hmm.
And I think that's where they get like the word jubilee from. It's like a happy
I was
celebration.
wondering. I was wondering.
Yeah. I think that's where it comes from. But Jubal, I think he was related to Tubal King, maybe, or like that might be a family name. I don't remember the genealogy of it all, but that always pops in my mind. Like Jubal, like the father of all, such as handled the harp and the organ. So it right off the bat in the fourth chapter of the Bible, you see instruments,
Hmm.
and I think some extra biblical references will have maybe the angels or the fallen angels teaching man about music and weapons and other stuff too. Um, that might be like the book of Enoch or Jasher or something. I don't remember, but um, chronologically in the Bible, if you look in the angelic realm, you'll see Lucifer had pipes and tabrets. Some people kind of make it sound like he had pipes coming out of him and like he was just a natural instrument or something, or some kind of weird supernatural instrument. But he was obviously some kind of musician, and some will say maybe like a worship leader in like leading the music of
Mm.
heaven or something. um I'm not going to go too much into that more, but one of the first songs you find in the Bible is when Moses led Israel through the Red Sea. And right after that, they sing a song, and it's about how God protected them and destroyed their enemy and all that stuff. So you see a song in Exodus, um, and there's so much emphasis the in a lot of the Old Testaments, especially the book of the Psalms. Which, what does that mean? It's songs. Like the Psalms are all songs. There's um 129 of them, I think. I need to refresh my memory on the number of Psalms in that, but they the Psalms were used by Israel, by the Jewish people, to memorize scripture. Even I think it's Psalm 119 is broken down by the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, and they would memorize those psalms um, by way of alphabetical memorization and singing. And a lot of the scripture was like oral tradition taught in songs and in like kind of like a call and response kind of thing.
Mm.
um, but you see song being very prevalent there too. So music has always been something that has been emphasized in the Bible from Genesis through Psalms. And you always see someone talking about singing. Really, in the Psalms, they talk about singing a lot, and in a lot of the Old Testament too, they talk about singing to the Lord. They talk about singing of His wondrous works and singing praise and singing joy uh, and uh, singing on instruments like psalteries. And I think David mentions he'll sing on his psaltery and his 10-stringed instrument. Um, on the other hand, you also see like in the book of Daniel where the three Jewish boys that were put in the furnace of fire, um, the congregation that was bowing to the statue, the idol, uh, they were worshiping with dulcimers and stringed instruments as well. And I mean, the Psalms, the book of Psalms, and all these other Old Testament books have so many mentions of instruments and trumpets and timbrels and psalteries and dulcimers and all these cool instruments. Like there's so many, like all these ancient instruments are pretty fascinating too. King David, when he was a shepherd, he played on a harp, like a probably like a lute like instrument, or some kind of a stringed instrument like that. So you see instruments everywhere. And um, well, I'll save my next comment for a little bit later. But when I look into the the New Testament, we, especially Paul's writing, because that Paul in the age of grace is the apostle to the Gentiles, apostle to the grace age believers. And um, he talks about singing pretty interestingly. And so I kind of wrote these down really quick. He tells us about praying and singing with spirit and understanding. Um, so, like one passage, he talks about praying with the spirit and praying with understanding, and then the next verse is singing with the spirit and understanding. So there's an interesting comparison that he's making with singing and praying, which I think that's fascinating. And when we look at the use of song, it kind of makes sense. because then he talks about in, I think that was like 1 Corinthians 14 that he said that in Ephesians 5, he talks about speaking to ourselves, making melody in our heart, with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. And he kind of broke it down into three groups. Um, I'm not exactly sure what all those three are, but some early church fathers in like the 16th century, like Isaac Watts, he had a collection of all of his writings. He wrote hymns and songs, and he literally called it psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs based off of those verses from Paul. And you also see that in Colossians 3:16, where he says, um, the word, he mentions the word of Christ dwelling in us, um, and using those psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs for teaching and admonishing each other. So in Ephesians, he talks about singing those songs in your heart, like to yourself. And then in Colossians, he talks about singing, using those songs with teaching and admonishing other people. So it has like a two facet kind of use, like inside and out, within and without. Um,
So using songs to admonish people.
yeah,
A
that was kind
biblical
of.
rap battle, or
I don't even know. I mean, I think with the use, and maybe I'll start getting a little more into like what this might mean. But with how he compares singing with praying, and singing within yourself and to others, um, and there's also there's that comparison with like in the spirit, but it also has a connotation in Colossians with the word of Christ. So if you remember back to our episode on prayer, praying is like communicating, like you communicating to God, and the Bible is God communicating with you, and the common denominator between the two is the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit uh, works in a man to understand the word, and the Holy Spirit also utters uh, prayers that we might not even know to pray for. But he the Bible says that the Spirit uh, makes utterances, that we might not even know how to pray. Like he almost prays for us in a way. Um, so these songs are all connected. Like singing is all connected to that, which I thought was very interesting. Um, Seeing how much of a spiritual use it has, for a believer. And there's also just a few other verses that I pondered on with music and singing. And in the Psalms, again, it talks about singing and everything. And some of these verses are kind of well known. Some people are like, oh yeah, that, like when it comes to singing, it's sing a new song, like sing to the Lord a new song. And then sing to the Lord and with a loud noise, rejoice and praise. It, that verse, I think it was Psalm 98:4, uh, with a loud noise, rejoicing and praising. So, what does this all mean in Christianity? Well, in practice, from where I come from, we use song in a time of gathering together to a lot of people call it like to worship, or to like a worship service, or they call it worship music, where you come to the church and you sing songs of praise, songs of rejoicing. Um, in in some circles, they stick to pretty traditional, like uh, pretty old hymns, or they stick to like a specific style of hymns. And to me, sometimes it almost confounds the idea of singing a new song. Like there's nothing since like maybe the 1960s at the early or at the latest that has been put in these hymnals sometimes. But
Wow.
yeah, but to me, the music can be a very controversial topic within Christianity, and it's kind of hard for me to say that, but it really is. And for me personally, music has been kind of a struggle in my faith and in my walk, and it's been kind of a place of like, what should I do? Like, because there are so many opinions in within Christianity about music. You know, you'll have some denominations that will not use instruments. There are some denominations that will, maybe they won't even sing. Um, and I mean, to me, having no instruments is kind of weird to me, because the Bible talks about singing unto the Lord with instruments.
Mm.
um, and with some, some churches, I use the word churches as like more like denominations or sects. Sometimes it could come down to a single church congregation that might differ, but some churches don't want to use guitars, and some churches don't want to have. I mean, there are a lot of, you know, more conservative churches along the lines of music that don't want guitar or maybe like louder music. A
Or
lot of,
drum set.
yeah, drum sets and electric guitars are frowned upon in some Christian circles. They see them as instruments of the devil or something. Like they get a little they get a little too nitpicky sometimes with it, in my opinion. Um, some of them will, strictly piano, strictly organ, even though the organ apparently has a historical connotation with murdering Christians. I don't know. Um, um, there's just so much to be said within that framework of music in Christianity. Um, but generally speaking, when we come together for a, again, worship service, some people call it worship service, like for a Sunday morning church service, it's a worship service, and you always sing songs. And I mean, there's even controversy and, definitions on like what's going to be on stage for the singing time. Like, is it a band? Is it just a person singing up there leading the music? Like, what's going on? Um, I think I heard I hear this comparison with like worship bands. The guitar, maybe a keyboard, drum set, if they have the money or whatever, or the skill, or electric guitars. And some churches will say, that's like all too much for show. They're using the wrong music, and that's really them up there, and they're singing to the audience instead of the audience singing to God. And that's how they'll justify that thought. And okay, that's pretty like uh good intentions there. Like, I could see that. And they'll say you only should have one person up on the podium singing the song to lead the congregation to sing praises to God. And instrumentation here and there. I've seen so many different types of how to do this. Every single church I've been to has been different. like every single church, like there's orchestrations, there's guitars, there's not guitars, there's pianos, there's a band, there's just a small group that's not really a band. Like,
There's a full rock band with the drums,
yeah,
in
I've
the
been to
little
them with
glass
lights and
box.
smoke, like smoke machines and or fog machines. Like, they vary so much.
Wow.
And sometimes it's I'll get to this later after after we talk about the basics. But we sing, and it's pretty interesting. I mean, I love the old hymns. That those those are always really good to sing. Really amazing writing in those. From where I come from, we sing a lot of those old hymns. Um, and I say old as if that was a bad thing. Like some people say, like, "Oh, those old hymns," but those are very classy writings. Um, One thing, for some reason, it just like it impacts me, or it like impacted me, like, wow, like this is really the one of the only points in the Bible where it uses the word hymn besides the ones I just mentioned. Um, and that is when Jesus and the disciples were having their, the quote unquote Last Supper, up in the upper rooms in Jerusalem. They broke bread, they drank the wine together, and then they sang a hymn. And when my church does the communion ceremony, taking the Lord's Supper, we always sing a hymn right afterwards, because that's what they did in that upper room. And then they departed, so we always sing a hymn last, and then we leave. So it was just very interesting to see that uh, after that, and even it was kind of a weird, like an awkward place to be, especially if you were Judas Iscariot, because he was like, "Am I gonna betray you, Jesus?" And Jesus is like, "You said it." I was like, "Okay, let's sing a song." It was just it's just that's just how my mind works. But you even see some of the apostles singing, like Peter and Paul singing in jail. When they're chained up, they're singing, and that might lead to like an earthquake to break them out or what. But they're singing, they're rejoicing, even in a muddy pit of despair. They're still singing. So singing always has that uplifting, and that's why we sing in those services. Most everyone will say we sing to prepare our hearts and to prepare our spirits for the message that is going to be preached. For the like, we prepare ourselves by getting our spirits into that that working of a more spiritual setting, and then we can, when we hear God's words spoken, we can more better discern them and be in the right spirit, because our spirit can change. We might not have the right spirit about us, or even our mood. Like, I don't want to hear this stuff when I'm grumpy, but if you listen to a song, people listen to, like, I got to put my headphones on, I got to get in the right mood. Like, man, I'm so down, I got to listen to a happy song. Or I got to, maybe you're just down and you want to hear someone just as down as you, so you can relate to them or something. So
Yeah.
so you can feel like you're not alone. There's one message that really changed the way I viewed music for a very long time. Um, and that was about the power of music. And the preacher that delivered that message, he's a musician, and he delivered it in such a way, it's like, wow, that I can't believe, like, I've never really thought about this. But he talks about just the movement of music itself can change. Obviously, the film industry uses music in that way. He played the two notes together on the piano. Dun, 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 dun. What does that, like, what emotion does that give you? It's like, oh, it feels like something's coming after you. It's Jaws. And he would play a melody that we might know well in like a happy, like a silent film kind of way, like, and then he would play it in like a jazzy, like a bluesy kind of way, and like, see how that changes the song. And people use style ironically sometimes to emphasize points. So um, the like music itself, there's just something about that, like A to G and everywhere in between, that like somehow does something to us. Um, and biblically, from a biblical standpoint, you sometimes will look at numbers, like kind of a numerology kind of thing. I don't get too much into that, but it's always interesting that like there's like seven colors of the rainbow, seven notes in theoretical music, and you know all the half steps in between and everything, and then you have the jazz notes in between those. So it always makes me it's always interesting to think about that, like, man, 7 days in a week, like it's just something that I always think about. I don't know uh what significance that has in this conversation, but I just had to
Well,
bring
what
that up
about
in music.
like Eastern classical music where it's not structured the same?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot to be said about musical structure in music. A lot in Christianity. A lot of those that are against more modern music will say that that came from tribes in Africa that used music to worship false gods, and then it was brought over and turned into rock and roll somehow. And they even go as far as like syncopation, like that we can't do that, we can't have syncopated beats, like it has to be a specific time signature and where the beats fall. Like some people break it down that far.
Wow.
um, and Eastern music, I don't even know where to go with that, with some of the conservative, like more conservative view on music. And because I've heard some, self-proclaimed conservative musicians like say like, oh, I love all types of music, like even like tribal jungle music I listen to, but they'll stay away from rock and roll or something like that. So I don't know. So again, sometimes it seems a little nitpicky, or a little buffet style or something. But I mean, you can kind of get to where you can kind of understand like what my stance on music is, but I'm not going to get into that yet. I'm just going to stay in within the general realm. But that, I mean, really, I don't know if I can belabor the point anymore, because there's just so much that I can talk about the Bible and music and the world of Christianity with music. Um, I mean, it's always changing. Isaac Watts, he's one of the great fathers of hymns. He's a prolific hymn writer, and he came from a church that his father was the pastor or priest. I don't remember what like denomination or whatever he came from, but they only sang from the Psalms, from the Bible
Hmm.
itself. They would only sing the words in the Psalms. He's like, these are so boring, Dad. Like, they don't even rhyme in English. Like, there's nothing fun about this. And his dad's like, well, you can write Psalms then. Like, if you want to, you can write Psalms and we'll sing them. So he started. A lot of his hymns are based off of Psalms, and he writes it more of to a more modern Christian view, not so much of a Jewish view. And because they don't sing Jesus's name in the Psalms, so he kind of tweaked a little bit
Hmm.
here and there, and a lot of his hymns were based off of those. So, and that's just one guy out of all of the other thousands of Christian musicians out there, and songwriters and artists that have changed the face of Christian music for the better or worse. So, um, yeah, I'm just gonna end my general topic there, and leave that open if you have any other questions or anything. Like,
No, I just when you were talking about how music actually like affects us, and it reminded me of uh, at work today. A coworker was playing some music really loud, and the song ended, and all I hear is them shouting, "Oh, my vibe!" Like they were like, no, it's over, like they were mourning the ending of the song because the feeling that it evoked in them has now ended with the
Hmm.
song.
Yeah, yeah. Like when people work out, you don't hear them listening to whiskey blues or something. You hear pretty fast-paced stuff going on that will make them want to run faster and work harder for some reason. Sound waves do that to you.
Yeah.
And the words too. Words have a huge impact on people's minds too, but
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to get too much into that either. But yeah, words and music, combine them together, you have something powerful. And songs can change the world as we've seen in history. So,
Yeah, there is a lot to be said about how music has changed history.
hmm, and how history has changed music.
Mm. So, should I touch on a kind of a general overview of music in Buddhism?
Yes, I'm very eager to hear this.
I'm. I hope I don't disappoint.
That's
I do not have notes, but
okay.
I mean, so Buddhism is an oral tradition from the get go. Before they wrote anything down, they were memorizing it and really chanting it. From as far as we can tell, they've been chanting the suttas and everything really.
Mm,
And that was one of the hugely important roles of the monastic community in the beginning, was you know memorizing the suttas and passing them down through oral teachings,
mm,
because I mean, oral traditions have been shown to be actual, like, very good preservers of uh of information.
mm-hmm.
And but of course Buddhism started writing their stuff down eventually. uh but the chanting tradition continues, and I think this is like probably the biggest role that music plays. It might not be very musical. And I'll go into music a little bit more. But what's the most prevalent use of music is in the form of chanting, and in more traditional senses, it's not as melodic. It's almost very drone like, and I mean it's used as that way so that it's easier to remember. It's easier to memorize a 108 syllable mantra if there's a kind of a pattern and a beat to it. um
Mm,
and in Theravada, in the early schools, it's not as much mantras as it is chanting, you know homage to the triple gems or the five precepts or taking refuge or stuff like that. And you still see that a lot today too. But in traditions like Mahayana and Vajrayana, you get kind of more of the mantra chants, which are generally a phrase that's repeated to represent, usually like a bodhisattva, an enlightened being like Kuan Yin or
mm,
Vajrasattva, and they're generally used from my understanding of you know spending a lot of time with the Tibetan tradition, of using it as a tool to help bring your awareness to focus. And I notice this a lot in Tibetan tradition, is that they'll utilize thought, speech, and mind. So, or thought is mind, body, speech, and mind. So they'll give you like a picture to look at, a painting to look at, to focus and instill in that, like, you get from that the qualities that you are meditating on. uh you know a bodhisattva, you'll have a painting of a bodhisattva. or a mental image of a bodhisattva, and then also a speech version of that, which would be a mantra. And using these, you focus in on what that bodhisattva represents, compassion or wisdom, and you use that to help cultivate that within yourself. And so you get a lot of mantras, and as mantras bleed into the Western world, they start getting a little more westernized in music sound. So, I mean, if you look up on YouTube, Om Mani Padme Hum, you will probably find dozens of versions of it. And many probably are very westernized sounding as well.
Hmm.
Pretty basic chord progression and a very sing-songy uh, melody. So that's really the biggest role that music plays. There's also in the monastic tradition, if you're a monk or a nun, of not being able to play or listen to music as one of your
Hmm.
precepts. Uh, so there's kind of a lack of music in
Hmm.
monastic traditions, but they have chanting as well. Like they'll chant suttas. Um, when I just watched a video earlier this or late last year. Time is weird. When the monastics uh begin Vasa, which is their rainy season retreat. They go into retreat for like 3 months, 3 or 4 months, and to begin the retreat, they chanted I think it was the Buddha's first Dhammatak, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and I think it was that one. I might be wrong, but so it was, and it was in Pali, so it was a very beautiful chanting in a different language, and it's a strong tradition among monastics to do something like that, to chant the suttas. And a
Hmm.
couple of years ago, my temple hosted an international kind of event that was, I can't remember what it was called now, but we all came together and we had like 3 or 4 different suttas or sutras in the Vajrayana and Mahayana tradition. They call them sutras, and we all had, we had maybe 50 people in the room, all reciting a sutra out loud, and they're all different sutras, and it's like this great tradition of sutra recitation, and you're vocalizing the sutras into the world, and it was really cool. And we had many of different Buddhist uh, communities in the area come together to do this, and it was really cool, and kind of, I guess, kind of along the chanting. I don't know if we actually chanted or just read aloud, or if maybe there's no difference.
Well, if you read it aloud just at a certain pace, like it turns
Yeah,
into chanting. So,
yeah. I mean, when you, especially like in something like a sutra recitation, like you do end up reading it in a monotone voice, very chant like, and I think it's just a natural thing to happen when you read a sutra out loud.
yeah, I like that chanting reminds me of like the Catholic Church. They will have their like Gregorian chants and stuff like, and you hear them all the time um doing that. And I don't know if they get it from like an Eastern thing. I would imagine maybe there's some influence there, but um
Maybe. Yeah.
I I don't know about that. I'm not huge into chanting. Um it's kind of foreign to me. So
Oh, I would be completely sad if I forget to mention the Tibetan monks chanting and Tibetan throat singing.
I was just gonna say, isn't that a thing?
And that was one of my first introductions to Buddhism, is seeing Tibetan monks doing their chanting. They'll, I mean, it's
Hmm.
just booming, like they're chanting and they're doing this very low throated chanting, and they also use
Oh.
these huge horns that are just, you can just imagine them reverberating through the mountains, and these clashing of cymbals, and it's
Oh
just
yeah.
a
I think
sight to hear.
you sent me some of that before for like
Yeah,
world religions class. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something different.
it's a really like just powerful just presence when you experience that in person.
You said something that kind of reminded me of something else because you said like they something along the lines of like hearing it in like these I don't know if it was like a sutta or something, but in a different language, and it just sounds like the way it sounds, and like even when you don't know what someone's singing because it's in a
Mm,
different language. I remember this one time I was in Nazareth, um in the they had this Nazareth village uh set up at like biblical times, and we were in this synagogue, and there's a guy, one of the guys there. We walk in and he just starts singing in this like booming low voice in Hebrew, and it's like, dude, that is like the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I don't have no idea what you just said, but like the way he sang it, like I had video of it, but I lost that video a long time ago. But
oh man.
it was amazing. And it's it reminded me of when we were talking about symbols and you were speaking to the Islamic symbolism. All they do is use like calligraphy for their symbolism, and how like it's beautiful. And I'm thinking like singing is just kind of like calligraphy of talking. It's like
Yeah, it
it's
is.
just beautifying the language somehow.
That's that's awesome.
That like now singing, I guess like certain styles have different fonts in my mind.
Yeah.
But
Oh
that's
my
just the way
gosh.
my mind works again.
Yeah, no, that's I remember like a visiting teacher singing singing some kind of prayer. I don't know if it was like a prayer from Shanti Deva's Way of the Bodhisattva or what it was, but it was all in Tibetan. And like, I mean, we had kind of a page with translation so you could like read what he's singing, but like the way he sang it was just like there's so much conviction and compassion in it. It's like I don't need to read what he's saying, I can feel it.
Right.
But I mean, I also I think a lot of that kind of like I love the Muslim call to prayer. Like it's just so powerful and beautiful and haunting, uh and really any like kind of religious singing in like in any language, like
Yeah, the in that documentary Walk With Me, some of their um I don't know if you would call it singing or chanting or whatnot, reminded me a lot of um of the Islamic prayer calls. Like it, like some people probably would mistake it for that if they heard it like on the streets or something.
yeah.
It just has that that similar that similar uh, like call to like some kind of it's not just your standard someone singing or yelling. There's like something about it that like makes it sound like it has a purpose to it.
Yeah, there's
um,
like an intention put into it, and like somehow for some reason you can hear that intention.
yeah, yeah, exactly. um, then you mentioned like the big horns that that they would blow, like reverberating through the mountains. That kind of reminds me of like the shofars in Israel.
I was just
Even
thinking
the
about those.
even the Messianic Jews, which are basically Christians that identify themselves as Israel, and that the only difference is that they believe Jesus was their Messiah. So they go around blowing shofars all around Israel, and they go like they try to sneak into these national parks and blow, and it's like, okay, guys, get out. Like they kick them out. Like, okay, stop it. um, but it reminded me of that, and the shofar has historical uses in the nation of Israel too. They had different calls with the shofars with their horns for different things, for war and for celebration and all that stuff, just to communicate, a way to communicate throughout the nation, really. So just different uses of instruments there too. So uh, I thought that was pretty interesting comparison there with
Oh
horns
yeah,
and
I mean,
trumpets and stuff.
just think about like the, the uses that instruments started out with, like whether it be, you know, calling a herd back, from across a valley, or, communicating over long distances or whatever. Like,
Hmm. And then like there's that martial element to instruments as well, with bagpipes and with drums and fifes and all of that stuff you see throughout history. It's used, um, even just percussion, shakers and stuff too. Like in the so many uses, and so many variations, and it's really, music is a variety. I mean, variety is the spice of life. So if something's bland, spice it up with some music or something. Next
yeah, I mean,
meal, change it up.
you know, we're humans just got bored with just talking, I guess. And it's like, what else can we do?
Yeah. You
I
just move
mean,
your
you
voice up and down.
and you just sit there clicking a pen or something, and you just can't stop. You
Yeah, yeah, you get into that.
or
You get into that.
pencils on a desk. Like,
Hmm.
if I'm cooking in the kitchen and there's something metal around me, I'm like, ooh, I wonder if this resonates. Oh, cool, and I
And
just
then what
start
if I hit
jamming
this
out.
afterwards? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's a good transition into like our personal musical lives, because music has a great impact, and I'm not going to go too into depth into like the history of music in my life because that's kind of boring. But at one point in my life, I hated music. Then I loved music later in my life, and then I started making music. The end. No, um, especially in my in my faith. R- right after I became a Christian, I uh, decided to focus my musical listenings to to faith-based music. And so I started like listening to Christian artists and stuff, and it was like like the contemporary Christian music that you'd hear on the radio, on the usually the lower band channels on FM. Um, and yeah, I played music too, and I wrote music at the time, and so I kind of changed that focus as well. And it's always had a impact with my music. And but when I started getting more into my faith walk, as I might call it, faith walk, or my my walk, or my whatever, um I music started becoming a little scarier for me, because I heard so much about, don't listen to this, and you can only listen to this, and make sure it doesn't have this and that. I'm like, oh man, this is confusing. Like, how can anyone like music when like you might accidentally listen to something that's quote unquote bad? And it dampered my musical uh not just my musical listening, because that really wasn't affected or anything because I liked what I was listening to, but like my musical writing and making music. I mean, which it wasn't like a bad thing for me or anything. It was just different, and I felt kind of stuck. But I think over the years, I've realized that so much of this music stuff is really opinionated within Christianity, and like um, certain instruments can't be used or certain styles can't be used, and like if you add one thing, it might be a little no or something. Like it just got kind of nitpicky. And when I look at scripture talking about a loud noise, new song, speaking to yourselves, making melody, um, you know, singing praise with psaltery and 10-stringed instruments, and um, even just dwelling in the wisdom and making noise and singing um, these psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. Like I see variety in that, and I see personal discernment, and I see a personal delivery, and I decided not to be stuck in such a, because I had a pretty narrow conservative musical view for a while, and that and not saying that that was wrong of me to do. It was just I think it was a good place for me to kind of refresh my mind on music, and then I I kind of moved into less conservative way, because like before that, like I would not listen to anything that wasn't like these people, this style, and like that's it. Like going outside of that territory is kind of scary. And a lot of that music didn't appeal to me anyways. Like it was kind of boring and cheesy sometimes too. And I'm not talking about contemporary worship music. No, that would have been whoa, way too crazy to listen to. Like way too much way too much drums and guitars there. Which it that's just kind of cringy to say now. But I mean, I'm not. I've opened my view of music a lot more, and not so much as like stepping away from like faith-based music, because that's like my life is my faith. So like my music is obviously going to revolve around that. And there's a musician that I really like his music, and he was doing a Facebook live video, and I just happened to be watching, and he's not a huge artist. Like he doesn't have thousands of followers, maybe thousands, but he was just like sitting in a coffee shop like, oh, hey guys, what's up? And someone said something, and he's like, well, I don't just sing Christian music. I just sing my experiences, and like and my you sing about life. And like as a Christian, what is your life about? Like so that we just happen to be uh sharing our life in Christ with other people through music. Because music is about telling stories sometimes, and and telling about the good and the bad, um, which you won't find a whole lot of like depressing hymns in a Baptist hymnal. It's usually more uplifting, and some songs don't have a place in a worship service. Um, and I think that's where I was getting stuck. I started discerning. Well, duh, I'm not going to sing this song at church for a worship song or something. Which I mean, we don't. I think in my circles we don't use the term worship music that much, because it has like a negative connotation to contemporary Christian music. Um, so it's kind of narrowed down a little bit, but um, I like so much different kind of music. Like I can't not enjoy this music, and I stay away from certain things, and I uh, spiritually speaking, it's um, you need something that would edify, and you need something that would build you up, and not necessarily take you away from having the mind of Christ and being being enabled by the Spirit. Um, but music has effect either way. So I try not to limit myself with music anymore. And you really, it was a point of like, um, it was a really a point for me, and I'm kind of like just opening up, and it's kind of raw for me to talk about this stuff. But like, music was really again scary for me. Like, and I almost to the point where I didn't even enjoy it anymore. Like, I just it was kind of it was scary. Like that's the best way to describe it. But I think I had to get over other people's opinions and look at
Mm.
what the word of God said to me about it, because I was too focused on what other people said about it and not what God said about it. So uh, different people have different opinions and different preferences, and um, they have different limits to themselves, boundaries. You Different people have set different boundaries spiritually within themselves. Just talking about like the the, the Christian realm still. Paul says that some some are babes in Christ, some are still drinking milk, some can eat the meat, um, and not to. There's a point where you can make yourself a stumbling block to those that are still learning and growing up in the faith. So there's always like you got to be careful sometimes. But really, when I see people, my peers, no one ever talks about music. It's always a voodoo topic almost. It's
Mm.
kind of annoying. Like it's it's almost too limited sometimes, it feels like, because people are too scared to talk about it or open up about it. But
Wow.
I listen to, folk is my jam usually. Like I like folk music. Um I like folk music. I like, some contemporary Christian. Some of it is a way too cheesy and like cringy to me. Some of it is too pop, and I don't like the pop music, but I like some of the country stuff, some of the more rocky stuff, going into even like maybe metal, but I like I'll listen to like lo-fi hip hop, future garage, like some vague weird genres. Like sometimes like some of that will just be like, I need to focus. I need to like calm down and focus on what I'm doing. Like if I'm working on homework or doing work. So I have to like change my tune a little bit, um, to give me some background noise or something. But it's not just noise. It's music. It's like, it's music. That's all I can say
Yeah.
about it. It's music. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
and, and I sing the music I play. Again, it's like more of a folk style. That's just, I guess that's just my personality in music is like a folk
yeah.
style.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't
Personality.
say my musical journey has been as difficult, but yeah, I can understand and empathize. Um, man, where do I begin though? Like,
Here's my last sentence for like my little thing transitioning to yours. Um, Music is to be enjoyed. There we go.
very well put. um, yeah, I think it's just really interesting to hear about that. Because I was aware that music was a controversial topic, and what's good and what's not good to listen to, etc.
Hmm.
I mean, I think you get that in a lot of like the modern Christian culture of,
Mm,
I've known people who are like, oh, I only listen to this radio station, like,
yeah. Oh,
um
don't even get me started on commercial music, because
which
it's literally you have to put product out, man. Like they literally call it commercial music, and like just
yeah,
from a personal stance, like I can't stand that.
yeah,
But that's just my non-conventional way, my non-conventional ways, like
yeah,
personal
I think what's so great about folk music,
opinion.
is I think something I a quote that I've seen attributed to Woody Guthrie. He said that folk music comforts the disturbed and disturbs the comfortable. And I think that's,
Yeah.
so true. You're not making music to make music, get listeners, whatever.
Turn into a factory and get your numbers up.
Yeah, it's like, you can play the market, you can know what sells, or
Hmm.
you can be, a Woody Guthrie who's just like, I'm gonna write a song about something that matters to me, like,
Yeah, exactly.
and that's really the heart of the music movement is, you know, I see a lot of like, I know in ancient Celtic times, the court bard, what, he wasn't there to sing songs to the king to entertain him. He was literally there to record history.
Hmm.
And that just goes to show how important the oral tradition is. Like they would recite lineages of the king, lineages of the court, not, hey, here's a snappy tune that everyone loves. Like,
Here's a number one hit this week.
yeah, and you see so much in in folk music, even contemporary folk music, and some of the classic folk revival era music, where they're telling stories of current events. You get a lot of that in like the folk labor music scene, of telling about like riots and strikes and
Mhm.
important figures who were killed, and like it's just
That's true.
history in music. And I think it's really powerful because people listen to music, and
Yeah.
so they'll listen to this stuff and hear what's going on, and
Mhm.
um but I
Hmm.
don't know why I went on that diatribe about uh folk music, but
I think I almost get the same feeling when it comes to, I mean, he's kind of more in the contemporary Christian realm, but Rich Mullins was an artist that kind of made waves. Like, wow, why is this weirdo like singing barefoot in like ripped up jeans, and why is he carrying a hammered dulcimer around? Like, he kind of made waves and like set the tone to something different, um but like kind of in like a folk music stage of like, I'm not here to like to you know make the same song that you heard last week, but just a little cooler. I'm just here to talk about Jesus in my life. And like that's almost like, to me, that's like almost the Christian equivalent of like what folk music in the world does. And there's tons of other folk, like, or not folk, but like Christian musicians that do the same thing. Just coming from that faith point of view again. I just had the button to say that.
yeah, I think what draws me to specific kinds of music, and there's music that I listen to and it's like, oh, I really like the sound of that, but a lot of the music that I seem drawn towards has like an intention behind it, has a purpose, has a goal, almost not a goal, but like
Hmm.
a reason. There we go. um
Hmm.
it's not just, oh, listen to this top 40 hit. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, this artist comes out of a musical movement, or maybe has an aim, that drives their music. and
Mm.
I think it just adds something, a little something extra to music.
And on the flip side of that, like I've recently, not recently, but like I use music also to like get out of a purpose. Like that's why I'll listen to like jazz or blues or like a lo-fi hip hop kind of thing, like just to like escape it all. So I completely agree with your statement of like purpose behind music, because like what does music do to people? Sometimes it pumps them up, like I'm ready to face the world and like get out there and make a difference. But it also like use it as an escape too, like to forget about even just like the day's like worries, and just sit
Yeah, I
back and
mean,
like
that's true.
listen to some like my favorite is like bluesy, like acoustic, like guitar, just hitting the right note at the right time or something. um
Yeah, I
or
mean,
even recording artists have really good ways of making things sound just hit that spot, like with their uh with their programming and stuff, on their computer, and they just release things to SoundCloud or whatever. They don't have to be big to make that difference.
yeah, yeah. I definitely do also do that where, you know, it might not be lo-fi hip hop or bluesy acoustic or something, but like some kind of metal or rock, or sometimes even just something, some kind of smooth jazz that sounds like the Weather Channel or something.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
oh yeah, like
Yeah.
I
Yep.
can I can breathe easy now.
Hmm. And sometimes like I need a soundscape, or sometimes I need some like just some really soothing classical music, or maybe soundtracks from a movie. Like let's visit the Shire.
Or new age,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. A new age uh, experimental thing or something,
yeah, just like
or
swelling
soundscape.
synths and
Yeah, yeah, soundscape.
calm. Yeah, it's just something else. But
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the range of music is really a range of emotion, and that's really what music is. It's almost making you change your emotions. Like you can
yeah.
just feel it. Like why in the world can a piece of music with no writing tell a story? Like
Yeah,
how is this making me cry?
that's that's so it's so bizarre to think about.
It really is.
But do we want to touch on like our own music that we make and how it relates to our
Yeah.
faith?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I like my music I make. You can go to markscottmusic.net and find me there. Uh, check out my music. My early albums within my Christian walk, I'm not extremely like, I don't love them that much because they weren't that bad. That was kind of my constrained time. Like I thought I had to fit the picture, and I felt like my creativity was dampened a little bit. But um, you know, I break out. I break out of that constraint, and my latest album was From a Gilded Hilltop, and even that was historically through the last 10 years. Um, that's basically like a story of the last 10 years for me. Um, but yeah, I do folk music mainly on faith. Sometimes not. Like sometimes it's just a story of life, or maybe like a ballad or some kind of other story. But you and I have done music together too, and we have our own album out there, like The Lost Trail. That's a great instrumental album.
Speaking of instrumental music telling stories,
Yeah, yeah. That one has that songs of adventure. Like, why do these songs tell adventure without any words? And you can read why in the liner notes on our websites.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, and right now I'm trying to get out of a creative uh, dearth, if you will, because I cannot get anything out. But I think I'm starting to write some more songs with February album writing month. We're in middle of it, and I think I might have written 2 songs so far.
Oh wow. I think
Yeah,
I have
I
one
haven't
up,
posted them or anything, but yeah.
but I mean, I feel that like the writer's block of music,
Hmm.
I've just been stuck. But um, a lot of my
Yeah.
music too, it's very folky uh, and it's weird. For some reason, it's weird for like me as a Buddhist to say it's like faith based because that's not vernacular that we use. But that's another thing I want to like. There's so much contemporary Christian music and almost no contemporary Buddhist music out there that's not mantras.
Well, here's your
Um, I've
chance.
I've come across a few albums of some independent musicians like me who are like, hey, we need some Buddhist themed music. And if you guys know of any, please send them my way. I love finding new music like that. But um and I think it's because like I don't make music that's specifically Buddhist music. It's kind of like what you were telling about, was it Rich Mullins?
No, that the person that was talking about that was I think he's from New Zealand. His name is Strahan. Coleman Strahan. Strahan is his stage name.
Okay, so yeah, like he was saying, I don't write just Christian music. I write music about my life and experiences, and
Hmm.
it's the same with me. Like I don't write music specifically like, oh, I need a Buddhist tune about this. It's just like, what has been my experiences on my path. Um, that's not to say that I don't actually write specifically Buddhist music, but
Right.
and I think it's kind of funny because like your you know musical vitality is found by like looking beyond your limits and discovering new stuff. And for me, in the recent past, it's been coming back to traditional Buddhist texts. Oh,
Oh wow.
namely the Dhammapada, which is a book of verses that that I thought maybe it would be cool to put it to music. And
Mhm.
um so like I'm just like creatively empty. Like I don't know, I just don't have that spark to write new music.
Right.
So a lot of times if I feel like I want to make music and can't, I'll just crack open the Dhammapada. It's like, okay, next chapter.
Yep.
Which is funny because I started that with taking the first two verses of the Dhammapada, which are very like very eloquent, very just to the point, beautiful analogies and stuff. And I just like put it to a tune. It's like, oh, that'll make a great song. I'm like, but there's a whole book of verses. What can I do? So like, I'll write the first chapter, and
Well,
then
I've
I
done that
get
with some of the Psalms too. I think one of the last Psalms. I don't know if it's the last one, but I put that to music a long time ago, and I'm like, man, I really want to put that to music again because there's like so many layers that I want to unfold in that song because there are layers to that one Psalm, and it like brings in more instruments as it goes in.
mm,
And like I really want to get that in its like in totality, like in it come. I want that to come to fruition with
yeah.
the music that I put it with it. Um, so
And I think like I don't know if it's the fact that you're not writing the lyrics, but like the Dhammapada songs that I've put together have been some of the more musically creative songs that I've come up with, different like unexpected key changes and tempo changes. And
mm,
it's like I never
oh
do this in
yeah,
my own songs. And it's just a totally different new realm to play in.
hmm. Yeah. I don't know if I'll ever be able to beat my creativity from 2009. Because I had some good creativity juices running. Maybe I just spilt them all then.
I know. I like look back at some of my older songs, and it's like, man, if only I could do that again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
Well, like I visited a folk music festival this last year, and man, that like excited me. Like because we did a songwriting circle, like all these songwriters were singing to their own songs and sharing them. I'm like, man, this is giving me such like great inspiration and good ideas. Like I'm pumped. And then like the February album writing month, that that network and that community, like you run into some weird stuff and it's like, okay, I think I can write something like a little weird, but not as crazy as this guy. Like this person would not so, but
I think
like
I'm one
so
of
many
those
good ideas out
people,
there.
but
Oh yeah, that was yours. No.
yeah, I mean, for me, like what I consider a good song that I've written usually comes up very organically. And
Hmm.
looking back on it, it's like, how in the world did I come up with that? Because I can't sit down and
Yeah,
consciously
exactly.
do that.
Exactly. Like if you try to make yourself right, like I don't know how the commercial writer, well, I do know how the commercial writers do it because they take the formula, they erase a little,
Algorithms and linear programming or something.
yeah,
Like,
exactly, probably, and like an automated like uh, rhyming dictionary throwing things in and everything, like probably. um I know how they do it because that's not really that creative. That's just plugging things into a formula. That's like calling a spreadsheet creative. It's really not. um, no offense to pr- data analysts and spreadsheet people out there, but um, yeah, yeah, creativity is a weird thing. Um, is that's especially when you get stuck. Like, why is that stuck there? But hey, I had a question for you. What's some of the music that you're listening to these days? Like, what's your favorite musicians out there?
Aster the cat, she has such a lovely voice. um,
Yes. When's her album dropping? Or his?
hers.
Hers. Yeah, yeah. Aster. Yep.
But what music am I listening to? Especially like from a Buddhist standpoint. I mean, folk music goes really well with that. But like one of my favorite musicians is the folk artist Carrie Newcomer, and she is a Quaker musician, and she writes the most Buddhist music I've ever heard. Um, but yeah, her stuff is really uh very poetic, and she puts a lot of the same kind of intent and purposes that I put into my music a lot. Like
Hmm.
a lot of my music usually tends to be aimed at, interfaith dialogue and world peace, and it just so happens that she also does that, to the point where her album Everything Is Everywhere was had come about for being like an interfaith ambassador to India and meeting some classical Indian musicians and teaming up with them to creating just a wonderful album. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, um, but yeah, some of my like other top favorite artists are not very Buddhist. Uh, trying to remain relevant to the
We're
shows,
we're off
but
topic now.
yeah, we are way off topic. Like sticking with the folk genre, I love Gordon Lightfoot. He's my main my main man. He's such a classic folk artist who writes such timeless songs,
Hmm.
timeless classics. And some people say he's cheesy, but you know,
I like his stuff. His stuff is
yeah.
pretty good.
And Dar Williams, I think she is an amazing songwriter, and
Hmm.
just another prolific contemporary figure in folk music. Um, and of course, my all-time favorite rock band, Magnum. Can't go wrong with that. Uh, they'll always be my number one band, really. But uh, any have I been listening to any new stuff recently? I don't know. Sometimes I get stuck just going back to my favorites.
Well, yeah, and that's why they're your favorites because you
Yeah.
just you you go back to them and everything's okay again.
Yeah, it's so true. Like
Hmm.
I've my favorite album's been the same album for the last like 13 years.
Which one's
uh
that?
their 2009 release Into the Valley of the Moon King. Just can't go
Okay.
wrong.
Yep.
I've been like exploring more of the folk genre, um and found an artist a while ago, Rhiannon Giddens, and she writes some really wonderful folk music. I think I saw her mentioned either by Carrie Newcomer or Dar Williams, and then it turns out she actually uh, did a major part of the Wheel of Time theme song for the show.
Wow.
Um, so I thought that was kind of cool. I was like, wait a minute, that's her. What?
Hmm.
Um, and she was also in a really cool music video I need to track down that we had played at our uh, interfaith world peace meditation on New Year's Eve. I can't remember who did the song now, but she was in there. Like a ton of musicians from across the world were in there, and like famous musicians like Cat Stevens was in there, and
Hmm.
it was pretty cool. I need to find that.
Hmm. Interesting.
But yeah, and I have like a little bit of a metalhead sometimes. I'm very picky about my metal, but bands like Cobra and the Lotus, Pagan's Mind, they're just solid metal bands. Um, which sounds like jewelry, solid metal bands, but but yeah, what about you? What are you
Amazing.
listening to?
Oh man, lately my go-to is Josh Garrels. He's more like alternative folk Christian, which is a really weird genre. But him and Strahan was the one that really got me into that genre. He just has like such a low key. Strahan has like kind of a low key um kind of voice with singing, but he can really belt it out. And uh then I got into Josh Garrels. He's currently my favorite. He has some really good, um, some really interesting music. His album, uh, "War and Love and the Sea in Between." I think that's the order that it went in. But that's my favorite so far. And just has a ton of like different kinds of songs on there.
Yeah, I
It,
listened to that one, and it's very varied.
Yeah, yeah, extremely. And he even has a documentary on that, where he goes to some like random island with a bunch of people that he hired to like perform this whole album around the island, and like recorded that as a live album, basically. It was
Huh.
really, it's such a different world to me. Like his music genre is such a different world to me. But them like I've been listening to them a lot. Again, I'll like throw on some like lo-fi hip hop like as like a background, like a chill mode kind of thing. Um, I I ever since I listened or I took a history of jazz class in college, like I've been just going to that every once in a while, and that's my jam usually. Um,
Sometimes I'll just YouTube local on the Yates and just like run through.
It's
Like
kind of
people
a
literally just record local on the eights.
that's
So yeah, like the
amazing.
voices and stuff. It's hilarious.
That's awesome. Like Miles Davis, Kinds of Blue. That's like the epitome of jazz. Um, Especially the track "So What." That's like the epitome of jazz right there. That's my fave. What else have I been listening to? Um, I'll do Magnum every once in a while because just because it has a lot of nostalgic value to me as we were growing up and everything. Um, oh man, what else do I listen to? I've been doing a lot of like folk guitar, Celtic guitar kind of finger picking style. I've been listening to a lot of that lately. I'm trying to pick that up as my own musical skill, learning some different tunings and everything. And that's just so fun. Like it's such a
Mm.
rewarding style to learn to play.
Have you listened to any Brian Henke? Because he is a
No,
master at it.
no, I'll listen to like Al Petaway. Oh, who else? Who was that guy that I've been listening to? I don't even remember his name, but uh, Al Petaway was like my main springboard into the genre of like of finger style, like Celtic kind of guitar stuff.
Yeah,
But
look up Brian Henke because
yeah, I think I've listened to some of his stuff when you mentioned him in the past. I'm like, oh yeah, who's that guy?
yeah.
But anything with the uh, acoustic guitar in that in that realm, like it's just so skillful. Like wow, man, like I don't know if I'll ever be able to play these songs, but I've picked up a couple. I'm like, can't believe I can do this. um, but what I really love listening to, and it's so hard to find, is like a bluesy banjo, like just in the right spot. Like it's amazing. But
Oh, that just I remembered an artist that I've just recently started listening to, and she's a Kansas City local, but she does like very bluesy, folksy banjo, and she has a great voice. And her name is Kelly Hunt, and it's she. I think she does a few hymns too. I don't know,
oh,
but
interesting. That's interesting.
or at least like classic Christian worship tunes or something. But
Interesting.
bluesy banjo, yeah.
Okay. Well, that might just be up my alley. I've been writing a few bluesy banjo things, and some kind of bluesy songs too. I know we've been working on one, um, and we might be coming out with another album sometime soon, guys. So keep your eye out. Hey, what was your? Do you want to advertise your music
Oh yeah,
website
I
or anything?
completely forgot. Barefootbrand.com. Barefoot Brand. BARE, because some people don't really know how to spell it apparently. Foot BRAN brand.com.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I mean that's music right there. I mean, stuff you listen to. I mean, there's other stuff you can listen to that's not music, like this podcast right now, which you can find on YouTube,
And
all the podcast apps.
podcast, yes.
Yep, exactly. Except for, I mean, I have to catch up on that stuff, but on
Yeah.
the audio side at least. But
The viewers don't know.
what do you guys as viewers listen to? I want to hear your side of the story as well, especially if it's coming from a faith perspective, because again, like I said, like from a Christian perspective, like some of a lot of in my circles, like music seems like a taboo topic. So I want to hear from you guys, and from everyone else. I want to hear from you guys. So comment or shoot us an email, Baptist and Buddhist at gmail.com. No thes. Um, and I want to hear what you guys
Yeah,
have to say. And if
especially like faith-based music. You know, I've heard some really cool Baha'i musicians, and I listen every now and then to some Sikh like kirtan music, and it's just a joy to discover different religious music.
Yeah, even like on the depths of the internet, you'll find like teen Scientology music, and that's pretty interesting. So yeah, send some links our way for some songs, and tell us what you guys not only like to listen to, but what music means to your faith and to your walk and to your life.
And
'Cause
also let us
let's
know
talk.
to listen what you want to listen to from us. What do you want to hear from us?
Yes, yes. We have a lot of interesting topics coming up this season, and we want to hear what you guys want to hear. We want to. Why is that so confusing? We want to know what you guys want to hear from us as well, because I know there's so many topics within the faith-based and religious communities that we can't hit everything all the time. But we're going to get into some pretty interesting topics, I think, coming up. So
Pretty
hit us
weird
up.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. You can think I'm weird after a couple of these episodes.
You already know I'm weird, so
Yeah, we know. I think that's going to wrap it up for today. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all. If anyone's watching on YouTube, thank you. um, give us a shout out. Tell us who you are so we can avoid you. No, I'm kidding. So we can thank you.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I think until next time, this has been The Baptist
And the Buddhist.
with Mark.
And Brian.
And we will see you guys next time.
Oh yeah, the hurdy-gurdy outro.
Yes, come on. Hurdy-gurdy. We're still here, guys. We're outroing.
Outro.
Are you
Out
playing
of tune hurdy-gurdy.
Are you playing our traditional outro music? By the way, that's recorded by me and Brian. Our outro. Okay, cool. Ukulele, hurdy-gurdy. It's gonna happen.
Oh, I don't know why.
Oh, and we're still live.
We are.
I know. It's awesome.
Okay.